At 70 degrees Celsius, the land looks calm from a distance. Too calm. The tundra stretches flat and endless, a white surface without edges, without depth. Wind slides across it in long, steady sheets, pressing down coats and freezing every loose thread into place. Sound doesn't travel far here. It thins out quickly, like breath. 3 nomads move through the open snow in a loose line. They are spaced farther apart than usual. Not by mistake, by habit. Distance has always meant time. Time to react. Time to turn. Time to decide whether something coming closer is worth noticing yet. Their boots sink slightly with each step, then harden as the snow freezes again. No step is rushed. No movement is wasted. The lead nomad keeps his pace slow enough that breathing stays controlled. Short exhales. No fogging panic. Frost builds in his beard with every breath anyway. The others follow without watching him. They don't need to. Years together have trained them to feel changes rather than see them. When the wind presses harder from the left, all 3 angle their shoulders the same way. When the ground firms, their steps lengthen by instinct. For a while, nothing challenges them. That's when the mistake begins. The open land feels honest. You can see far. You can judge space. You can believe that anything dangerous will announce itself from a distance. The nomads allow the gap between them to remain wide enough that a sudden rush would still give warning. The lead nomad slows, not stops, just slows. The others copy him without looking. Spacing tightens slightly. Breath shortens. Somewhere behind the sound of wind changes pitch, like it slid across a different surface. Gloved fist rises. All 3 stop at once. The silence that follows is heavier than the wind. Snow settles. Breath hangs longer than expected. One nomad lifts a heel he placed too quickly and lowers it again, carefully, as if undoing a mistake before it finishes happening. They listen. There is no howl. No movement. No shape crossing the horizon. But the silence does not feel empty, that it feels shared. That the fist lowers. They move again, slower than before. Ahead, the land darkens slightly, where the tundra breaks into the dead forest. Black trunks rise from the snow like something half-buried that never finished dying. The nomads head toward it without discussion. Open ground has begun to feel exposed. Behind them, the wind smooths over their tracks almost as soon as they leave them. Distance still separates. The men dot. It still feels like protection. For now, the dead forest closes around them without a sound. Trunks stand too close together here, black and split. Branches frozen mid-fall, like they were interrupted years ago and never allowed to finish. Snow lies uneven, crusted in some places, soft in others. The kind that punishes careless steps. Without a signal, the spacing tightens. Wooden sticks shift in their hands. Not weapons yet. Not walking tools either. Something in between. The lead nomad angles his shoulders and enters first, slow enough that the others match him instinctively. Inside the trees, wind loses direction. Sound behaves wrong. A hanging branch blocks the path. He presses it aside with a stick, easing it back until it rests without snapping. Every movement takes longer than it should, longer than feels natural. A boot compresses snow. Crunch. They freeze mid-step. No one turns quickly. Fast movement is noise. Heads pivot slowly, eyes scanning between trunks. Frost thickens in beards and eyebrows, while they hold their breath longer than comfort allows. Nothing moves, then something does. Not a sound, a timing. The lead nomad shifts his weight forward. Again, somewhere deeper in the forest, unseen. Weight shifts to dot. They stop. It stops. Shape exists between 2 trees for half a second, pale against shadow, then slides out of view like it was never there at all. No chase follows. No sudden reaction. They pretend it didn't matter. Because pretending costs less energy than panic. They move again, out at the forest's edge. Broken branches litter the snow. Wind returns abruptly. Sharper now, angled wrong. Scent rides it, unfamiliar, heavy, close enough to matter. This time, the wolf does not hide. It steps into open view at a measured distance and stands broadside, calm, watching. Frost dusts its thick white fur. Pale eyes don't blink. It doesn't rush. It doesn't crouch. Behind the nomads, fresh paw prints appear where there were none moments earlier. Perfect spacing. Deliberate. The men close ranks without a word. Distance here offers nothing. And the forest remembers that before they do, the frozen river announces itself. Before it's seen, the forest ends. Trunks stepping back just enough to reveal a wide, pale stretch ahead. Snow lies flatter there. Too flat. Wind skims across the surface without resistance, dragging loose powder into thin lines that hide what's underneath. Ice. The nomads slow even more. The lead nomad reaches the river's edge and stops. He lowers himself carefully, knees stiff, and presses the wooden stick down into the surface. The sound that answers isn't sharp. It's dull, tired, like something holding together because it hasn't been asked to fail yet. He leans a little more weight. The ice groans. Not loud, but deep enough to be felt through the stick, up the arms, into the chest. He pulls back immediately. They wait. Wind slides along the river, carrying scent in unpredictable directions. Somewhere out of sight, snow shifts. Not rushing, repositioning. The wolves don't show themselves now. They don't need to. The crossing begins single file. Each step is tested before it's trusted. Heel first. Weight transferred slowly. The river answers every movement with a low complaint. A sound that makes the jaw tighten without permission. No one looks at the far bank. Looking ahead wastes focus. Halfway across, it happens. Not a fall. Not even a stumble. Just a slip. One boot slides half an inch farther than planned. The knee twists slightly. Wrong angle, wrong timing. The nomad stiffens instantly, teeth grinding together. No sound escapes. Pain travels up the leg anyway, sharp at first, then heavy. He pauses too long. Blood pushes through the wool at the seam near his knee. It beads once, twice, and freezes where it is, dark against pale fabric. He nods. He can still move, but not the same way. On the far bank, the lead nomad turns his head for the first time. Just enough to see it. Just enough to understand what it will cost them. They adjust formation immediately. The injured nomad moves last now. The others shorten their steps without discussing it. Pace drops. Breath thickens. The river is behind them, but the damage has already crossed with them. Somewhere beyond sight, the wolves change their positions. They don't attack. They don't need to. The injury has decided the speed. And at 70 degrees Celsius. Speed decides everything. The hut appears the way mistakes often do, quietly. Almost helpfully. It sits half buried at the edge of open ground. Its roof sagging inward. One wall bowed under the weight of old winters. Snow has packed itself against the boards so tightly that the structure looks sealed. Preserved rather than abandoned. The lead nomad sees it first and stops. Not relief. Calculation. They approach from the side, slow and wide, circling once before closing in. No one steps directly toward the door. The rear nomad taps the wall gently with his stick, listening for the hollow sound of collapse. The wood answers with a tired creak, but it holds. Inside. The wind dies abruptly. The silence hits harder than the cold. Breathing changes without permission. Deeper, louder. Hands stop shaking for a few seconds, like the body mistook the absence of wind for safety. The injured nomad lowers himself against the wall, Careful, controlled, but the movement still costs him more than it should, Dot. No one sits fully. Sitting means staying. Light filters through gaps in the boards, cutting thin white lines across the floor. Snow dust sifts down from the ceiling with every shift of wind outside. The lead nomad remains standing, eyes fixed on the doorway, counting time instead of seconds. For a moment, it feels like enough. Then the wind changes. Snow begins to push inward through cracks that were calm moments ago. The scent shifts with it, heavy, familiar now. The lead nomad stiffens instantly. His shoulders tighten before his mind finishes understanding why. Outside, movement passes the hut's shadow. Not close, not far. Paw prints appear along the wall line, spaced carefully, as if placed there on purpose. The wolves do not surround the hut. They leave gaps, paths that look usable. That's the trap. The lead nomad reaches into his coat and pulls out the fire-starting tools. He looks at them longer than necessary. Fire means tomorrow. Fire means warmth that can't be replaced easily. He drops them into the snow. The sound is small. Final dot, another nomad follows. Shedding weight he can't afford anymore. No one argues. The injured nomad watches, jaw tight, knowing exactly what that decision costs. They step back out into the wind. The hut remains behind them, silent and useless. Already forgotten by the land. Shelter, out here, only lasts as long as the wolves allow it, and they have decided to wait. The ridge rises gently, almost kindly, which makes it dangerous. Snow gathers unevenly along the slope, packed hard by wind in some places, loose in others. Each step upward takes more effort than the last, especially for the injured nomad. His leg locks briefly with every movement, then releases with a dull, spreading pain that no longer feels sharp, just heavy. They slow again. No one says it out loud, but they all feel the same thing. If they stop completely, starting again will be harder than moving now. At the top, the land opens. Visibility stretches wide across snowfields and scattered rock. No wolves stand in the open. No shapes move across the white. The silence feels too deliberate to trust. That's worse. The injured nomad's breathing grows shallow. Cold crawls deeper into his joints, into his thoughts. Fingers inside gloves feel distant, like they belong to someone else. The others close in without touching him, forming a tight shape that leaves no space for sudden movement. They descend into a narrow passage, where rock and ice wall in the sound. Wind hits from different angles, making it impossible to judge direction. Waiting feels dangerous. Moving feels worse. They pause. A low vibration travels up through the soles of their boots. Not heard. Felt. The lead nomad counts his breath to keep it steady. Another nomad blinks hard, convinced for a moment that he heard his name carried on the wind. He doesn't react. Hallucinations waste energy. They move again. Not faster. Not slower. Just forward. Behind them, something keeps pace without showing itself. Close enough to erase the idea of distance completely. The wolves never rush. They don't need to by the time the light flattens and shadows lose meaning. The cold has taken over the decisions. Muscles respond late. Thoughts arrive heavy, already slowed. They are still alive. That is not the same as winning. Tomorrow will be colder, and the wolves have learned how they move. Cold didn't rush. It waited.
The storm doesn't block the
Subscribe to
path.
Nomads of Ice.
It decides who
Cold isn't
finishes
finished.
it.